You're now listening to the Young, Educated, and Uncertain podcast with your host, Rashad Young.
Oh, what's going on, my podcast family? Welcome back to another episode of the Young, Educated, and Uncertain podcast. I am your host, Rashad Young. I appreciate you tuning in today, man. First and foremost, give it up for yourself. Give it up for yourself, man. New 24 hours to be great, man. Enjoy this thing that we call life, man. Another great conversation, another dope conversation with a dope individual. Her name is Dr. April Napier. She is a doctoral of social work. She's a doctor of social work. My bad. It's early. Okay. She's a doctor of social work. She is the creator of Raw Honey. Also, she does a lot of other things on the side as well. She's a photographer. She just recently shot her Breathe project, where she takes the pictures of black men, I think it was in particular in St. Louis, and just created a vulnerable space, man. We dive into a lot to this conversation, man. We dive into what she does, how the world is right now, man, and just, how we can continue to move forward in this space and create new levels of black leadership and black unity, man. It's a dope convo, man, but make sure you check out her Instagram page at Dr. April B. Also, as always, appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to this on your favorite audio platform. This will also be a video episode as well, so make sure you watch it on wherever it's going to be on. Probably just going to put it on Instagram and Facebook, because I really don't care for YouTube like that. But anyways, appreciate y'all so much, man. Hope y'all enjoy this conversation, man. Until next time, peace. Welcome back to another episode of the Young, Educated, and Uncertain podcast. I'm your host, Rashad Young. Today, I'm honored to be with a lovely guest, Dr. April. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you joining. It's actually been pretty cool. I had the opportunity to meet you, and definitely want people to know about the things that you do. So let's start with that. Where did you from? How did you get to this space today? How did you become a Dr. April?
There's a lot of answers to that question, but so I was born and raised in San Diego, California. But my family's from the South. My background's in social work. So just a lot of things that I've experienced within my life, I recognize that there are a lot of tools I just didn't have. Mm-hmm. And there's just a lot of things about identity that I didn't know. And so I wanted to endeavor on this journey of first figuring out what did I need for myself, and then figuring out how can I give that to other people so other people aren't feeling so lost like I was for so much of my life. So I went to school, like I said, for social work at Ohio State, focused on social work and criminal justice. So figuring out how crime was depicted as crime, but is it really crime, or is it just response to trauma? And then going into grad school, kind of focusing on the same thing of like, how do we address this trauma in the criminal justice system using clinical interventions? And then I taught for a couple of years as a professor at a university, left that, became director of multicultural affairs at a university down here in Texas. And then I just kind of took the plunge to go full time and start my own business and platform, which is Raw Honey Wellness and Coaching, and focus on using my passion of art and artistic expression, mixing with therapeutic strategies, to help us all liberate from all the stuff that society has done to us, all the stuff that systemic trauma has done to us, and finally be our true selves. So, and during that time, I was like, well, I feel like I need more schooling. So went and got my doctorate and just finished in August. And here I am now. I'm a journalist, I'm a photographer, I'm a wellness coach, and I'm a person.
That's actually very interesting. So I know you mentioned a lot. You said a lot. How you got to that point it sounds pretty crazy, from San Diego to Ohio to Missouri to Texas.
There's a whole bunch in between that I didn't even say.
Oh, wow. Was there any moments where you kind of just had like that aha moment of you wanted to go into social work? Like, did you have a moment where you noticed like the systematic oppression or anything in regards to like our race or identity?
I knew I wanted to do social work since I was a kid, mostly because I watched my dad go to college. And so he had a social work degree. But I also knew I wanted to help people, which, like, if someone said that now, like if I was the dean of a program and I asked why you want to go to social work, if you say I want to help people, like, I'm not gonna let you in. But at that time, I knew I wanted to help people I knew I was an activist. So in 5th grade, and this was like, I was a teacher's pet. I really was.
Mm.
And my teacher, I guess a lot of the students were complaining that the teacher just wasn't treating them fairly compared to me or compared to everyone else. And so I wrote a letter to her saying how like she should treat everyone fair. 5th grade, to treat everyone fairly. And she got really upset. She kicked me out the class. We're cool now. I mean, if I saw her, I think we'll be cool now. But at that time, how dare this 5th grader try to almost get her fired? And so that's when I kind of knew, like, I like to use my voice, like not in a way of like bossy or sassy, but I wanted to use my voice to make sure that everybody had a fair chance at everything in life. And I saw that everyone deserved that. And so that's what kind of clicked for me. So I like, for a second, I wanted to be a teacher. For a second, I wanted to be a lawyer. For a second, I wanted to be a journalist. And now it's kind of funny because I feel like I'm doing all three. In what I'm doing now. Mm-hmm.
No, that's actually crazy. 5th grade to be so outspoken, which is great because, you know, oftentimes a lot of us as kids, we kind of run into that wall sometimes where our parents tell us, you know, always listen to the teacher, but you also got another side of parents always tell you use your voice. So definitely glad that you use your voice. I know you mentioned activists. Would you consider yourself a more larger activist during this time, or this is something that you've done way before everything that's been going on this year?
I think I'm an excruciating, like a strong activist. I just think I make sure to help people understand what an activist is, because we think activists are only protesters. While I did have my fair share of protesting in my days, I recognize that if I get arrested, there's a lot to lose. And I'm down here Texas by myself. My family will come chop my head off if I'm over here getting arrested. Nonetheless, and it's no shade to anybody who is, we need that. That's just not my ministry. You know, activism for me is my platform. Activism for me is the Breathe Project. Activism for me is doing therapeutic strategies and education and workshops and different things like that. That's my form of activism, of helping the Black community understand what potential we have and like tapping into that and becoming self-efficacible, and helping our counterparts understand what our value is and creating spaces for us to be valued.
No, that makes sense. It actually is going to lead to my next question. Obviously, and this is just my observation, I feel like there's a larger appearance of people that are attempting to be allies. From your perspective, how do you think you can be an ally? Like, what do you think is the most effective way for people to be allies?
This is the radical me talking, but I no longer have space for allies. I want to see accomplices. And the difference is an ally, and I'm saying this from personal experience, so, and I don't want to out this university, but I worked at a university where I was always like backing the students. I was always trying to ride or die for the students. And everyone's like way over here in this corner over here, like, yeah, go April. Yeah, I'm so glad you do. And they're like whispering, but they're not coming to the forefront. So I'm getting shot. I have bullets in my face, my head, and everywhere. And they're like, oh, hey, that sucks, but we're rooting for you. Yep. Versus an accomplice recognizes the privilege that they have, recognizes that if they step in front of me, the people won't fire at me. And I want to see them use that privilege. I want to see them just as afraid or just as unafraid to lose their job as I am. Because at this point, it's not about my job. It's about the right of the students. And if I'm not working for the right of the students, why do I have this job? You know, and so I think that's what I'm looking for. While allies are so excellent and so great, I try to look for more spaces to be an accomplice. And I even say that for myself, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's the spectrum of ability, whether it's like people who are not from America, like whatever it may be, I also make sure to work that I'm not just rooting people on, but I'm stepping in spaces and using my privilege to advance other people who can.
This is so insightful. I always feel refreshed hearing different ideas. No, seriously though, because I feel like a lot of us are trying to be activists in our own right. But as you mentioned, like, you know, you got people cheering from you far away in the corner, telling you you're doing a good job. But in actuality, like their livelihood or their jobs or, you know, their reputation or their image isn't being affected at all. They're just kind of like silently cheering, which I always find very interesting, especially during this time, even in education in particular. I mean, I know you mentioned you taught for a second. I currently work in higher education, so I'm seeing it a lot more on a day-to-day where we're having all of these, you know, diversity meetings and like diversity groups and all these things that have started to be established and formed. But realistically, I still find it as an issue because you're still just putting Black people in a group to solve Black issues alone,
Yes.
which is always like it's like counterintuitive. You know, they'd be like, "Oh, you know, you're asking for representation, but here's your chance to do that." But that's not really. I don't think that's what people are saying. They're not saying put us all together in a group to help fix the issues that are asking to be fixed from other people. So I don't know. I really agree with that aspect. I didn't even think about that in regards to like allies and what was the word you used? You told me. I like it. Accomplices.
Accomplice.
Yeah. I think that's something that's great. You mentioned a Breathe project, and this is how we met. I saw I was in that Man Up STL group, and I saw this flyer or you promoting it. Never knew you, never met you a day in my life. And I was like, I have never modeled, taken a photo, but I read about it. And I was like, this is really cool. I'm gonna put myself out there. I was kind of scared at first. I'm really to myself and like reaching out to somebody I don't know, kind of iffy about that. But I was like, man, it looks really cool. And I reached out, you responded, and ended up being great. But what made you do the Breathe project? Was there something that you witnessed, something that just sparked the inspiration? Why'd you do it?
So I was raised by my dad. My mom had multiple sclerosis, completely disabled most of my life, until she passed away. And so, um, I watched the journey of my dad, figuring out, you know, he was previously incarcerated, previously drug addict, alcoholic, all those things. And when he met my mom, like life totally shifted around, you know, graduated summa cum laude. Like I said, I watched him go to school. Amazing father, like totally everything I needed. You know, I think I came out okay. So I think he did good, you know? So, but seeing how people still viewed him and seeing how he still viewed himself and how he still struggled with life, it's just so many questions I had of like, why is the process for Black men just so tough, you know? And then seeing like, you know, being in a long-term relationship and seeing people who are close to me, struggle as men to see the value that they have and to see, just to express, just to be and just to exist and having to pull emotion out. I'm like, okay, I don't think men woke up and just said, I don't want to be emotional or I want to be a cheater or I want to be neglectful. I don't think that happened. So what happened along the way? I don't think they were allowed to ask themselves that question. And I don't think any of us wanted to sit and listen. And I think when men start to explain it, we call it excuses. And especially as a Black woman, I had to reposition myself as a very strong Black woman to listen versus judge, you know, right. and think like, well, this is where you're supposed to be. You're 25. Why aren't you want to get married yet? You know, and realize there's so many things that have taught such a narrative that they don't have the space to breathe and they don't have the space to unpack that. And so I just wanted to start to build a space and a platform where Black men could breathe. And breathing takes inhaling and exhaling. And, you know, exhaling means completion. Exhaling means safety. Exhaling means comfort. And I recognize in a lot of spaces, including their own relationships, marriages, jobs, family, Black men don't feel that. And they're not allotted that space, even within themselves of like you said, like putting yourself out there, like there's not too many spaces that comfortably Black men can do whatever it is they want to do. They can't be dirty. They can't be weird. They can't be all these things because we shame it or we say, oh, what's wrong with you? You know, and just want to create that space for Black men to breathe and to express themselves so others feel ignited to express themselves too. And little by little, we can start liberating and giving context to the story and the experiences of Black men.
Wow, that was so well said. In so many different levels. I think as men, I think we all hit like that point at different points in our lives. Some of us figure it out earlier. Some of us figure out later, like that breaking point of, you know, how much trauma, you know, just trying to find ourselves, trying to fit into these boxes and narratives. Because I always say that the biggest supporter is Black women, but I also feel like sometimes we run into that issue of the dynamic of I won't say power dynamic. I would just say that the dynamic with identity sometimes with women wanting a man and then with men wanting a woman, but also like, you know, the mixing of what is right and what is wrong for each gender. So what you're doing is great because, you know, my friends, they were joking about it at first to me, because it's just, you know, it's something that we don't do. But as I explained it to them, they started thinking like, man, like we don't really do that. Like, or we don't really talk to each other about issues that are going on, or we're trying to like find ways to, you know, stay afloat. And I think especially now, for both sides, but I think as far as men, we don't really have that space to really open up emotionally without some sort of labeling behind it. And you find out like how taxing it gets after a while. And we shouldn't have to keep putting up this front for a period of time. But it's really crazy because I feel like our fronts end up affecting you all when it comes to like relationships or like family or everything else. So I truly appreciate you just, you know, taking the time for doing that, for allowing me to do it. Cause I think it's great. And I know it's going to continue to be big. As far as transition over to your actual brand, Raw Honey, what is the overall goal with that? Like, what are you trying? What is the long-term picture with all that?
That's a good question. Right now, it's really just building a platform, again, a space, an entity where people are able to express, where their stories are validated, and where people are liberating themselves from what society has tried to take from them and bring themselves back to a more well state of being. You know, I think there's just so many things in our language and our cultural practices that we call like that's just a Black thing that rob us from true wellness and true freedom and true liberation. And so I just want to create an expressive platform where we can share our stories, we can feel connected, but we can also feel whole and well and full of purpose again.
Mm. I also noticed you have a podcast. Is that still going on? The Nectar? Is the
It
Nectar
is.
podcast?
We just had an episode Friday. We're having another one this Friday. So nectar really focuses on, so like nectar, when you pull it out of the flower, it's like the gooey part of the process that's not the honey yet. But
Mm-hmm.
it's so important because if we don't have nectar, we don't have honey. And so the same thing of like, we can't skip the steps in between of becoming our best selves. We have to go through this nectar process. We have to allow multiple honeybees and worker bees to touch us. We have to be transitioned from one place and one state of being to another. And so it's focusing on what are those steps in between of you being just sitting in a flower and you becoming the true raw honey. Focusing on those little things in between.
I like the vision. I see it. It makes a lot of
Yeah, I
sense.
know you see the flower and you see the honey. I see it all.
Yeah. I got another question for you. It might be the final question. It's kind of in depth. When you think about our community in particular, and I think as far as like our call to leadership, what do you think is something that we can do to finally create that cohesive movement? Because I still feel like we're looking for something that's not happening. Even, you know, even watching the debates, I'm not, and really, I haven't been a political person. I always say that. It could always kind of feel like politics was a joke sometimes, because sometimes they look at our issues like, oh, Black people issues,
Yeah.
like figure it out. And so, especially this year when I was watching the first one, the actual presidential one, which was a joke itself, it kind of led me to the question like, what exactly are we looking for from these people? And on top of that, what is something that we can truly be doing to create that cohesive leadership movement? Because we haven't really had that in such a long time, as far as like a prominent Black leader leading us towards somewhere or giving us a sense of hope.
Right. And I think this is just my opinion, so nobody come get me. But I think the main issue is we don't have cohesiveness within ourselves. And this is why I create this platform. And it's not a blame. I think people say it in a tone of like, we can't even get our own selves together. How do you think? But instead of saying, we've been robbed of the opportunity to understand ourselves. Like,
Right.
we don't even know where we come from. We don't even know what tribe we come from. We don't even know our identity. We don't know why we have our last name. So that's hard. That's emotional damage in itself. We're traumatized from birth, from conception. I'm sorry, from the moment that the egg and the sperm meet. we're
Yeah.
traumatized because of intergenerational trauma. So that's hard. And then we have so many different narratives that are placed into our community, mostly by white supremacy. They know how to confuse us and devise us to split ourselves. And so we've taken that in because we're just trying to survive. It's internalized capitalism. So there's that. So that package right there keeps us from being able to be cohesive because we don't even know what to cohese with, if that's even a word,
Right.
So
No, I get what you're saying.
that's the first part. Now, if we were to just figure all that out somehow amongst the millions of us that exist, then it goes into resources. The America was not meant for us. We were nowhere mentioned in the Constitution. We weren't even humans at that time. And so it's hard for us to try to overthrow a system that's not for us. But we can, because if we really revolted together as we could, you see the NBA, so when we really do come together, Black people make up a lot of the fashion industry, the finances towards fashion industry, the finances towards retail, like a lot of different things. Black money, unfortunately, sustains.
Yeah.
And so we aren't there, everyone's falling apart. And so while we know we don't have the resources and the power, we do have power. It just may not be the power, but it's a power that can overthrow the power. And I think from the third thing is we have to be honest. I think this is a cultural norm that we don't want to address the elephant in the room if it's going to put us behind. So we don't want to address how problematic our candidates that we most likely are going to vote for have been for us in the past and in the present, because we're like, we can't tell the other people that we're not going to vote for them. Because we got to keep this alive and we got to pretend like everything's okay, because if I show them my hand, they're going to steal all my money, and we have to be honest and figure out how are we going to work towards true justice for ourselves versus settling for the worst of the two evils. And I think that's what's just happening because we're tired and we want to give up. And within that, we don't have any sense of wellness. So we're working people to death. We're not working smarter. We're working harder. We're hurting ourselves by working overtime and doing things that are not healthy for our being. And so it's kind of like just this cycle of unhealthiness and trying to do enough to survive versus how do I cut out this circle and do something to move forward?
That was a lot. That was a lot, but also it's all of it was true. I mean, none of it was false at all. I think it's just conceptually, I've been asking that all year. I mean, the NBA is a very prime example of what we can do when we do control the financial aspect. That's been my biggest question this year is like, why don't we use all that money and just put them into Black businesses, like fashion people, like everything we would spend the same money on, and just put it into those corporations.
I think you hear some people be like, I don't trust Black businesses or what they do. And again, this is why I come from empathy with everything. It's hard being a Black business that runs like a white business when you don't have white business money, like you don't have white business resources. Now that don't mean to be rude because someone's rude for no reason. But again, that rudeness comes from anxiety, that comes from other things, other traumatic things as well. So getting to the root of that. But I agree. I mean, I guess you think about Black Wall Street of like, when that does happen, they come and be like, no, and tear it down. And so we don't know how to protect our own when it does happen. But at the same time, there's some people that's so mentally messed up that I cannot forget that there's this woman that had a salon. I can't remember where it was, but some man came up and shot and killed her and
Are you
robbed.
talking about in Baltimore? Sorry to cut you off.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm just like, dang it. Like we don't even have to get to the white people to get to it. This person's already doing it in our own hood.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be honest about that, of how can we improve everyone's state of mind while, yes, holding accountable that white supremacy is real, and seeing how we can also develop our community as well.
Yeah, that story in Baltimore, that was the one where I was really thinking, I'm like, really? Because it was a young woman too. I'm like, she's just trying to do hair. Like it's not even
Exactly.
like it's hair. Everybody needs somebody to do their hair. And yeah, that really threw me off because I'm just like, it's so many, we spend so much money on everything. I mean, from especially materialistic stuff. I mean, I get it. We all like nice things, but like, imagine we put the same money into like our friends' businesses. They can get the same type of quality at half the price. And that's what you're saying, like white money and resources. Cause you know, the main issue is always customer service or they're rude or this, that, and the third. It's just like people are trying to, you know, make ends meet with a short staff of people and do it for their people as well. But with that being said, thank you so much for joining me. I've learned so much in this 27 minutes. In the long. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Did I go off?
Oh yeah, I was just saying I'm so glad. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I'm glad you learned, and I'm glad we met. Glad we crossed paths.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely will always be on my radar. I might need a photographer soon. I'm working on a new book. And it's kind of going hand in hand with your project. So if I know who to call when I need a nice photo, because you're definitely doing great. Yeah, you're definitely doing great things, and definitely excited to see what you're doing moving forward. So where can people find you on social media?
So you can follow me on my personal IG at dr.aprilb, BEE. You can follow the Raw Honey page, Raw Honey _PF. It's my real name, my full government name on Facebook, because they won't let me change it. But it's just April Napier on there. And then the Raw Honey platform on Facebook. If you want to learn more about the Breathe Project, you can go to rawhoneypf.com/breathe. Yeah, I think that's everything. I have a Twitter, but I won't look at it, so I don't know if you should follow.
I'm not a Twitter person either. I get it. It's weird. But no, thank you so much for joining. I really do appreciate it, and I know we'll be in talk soon. All right.